This video is for chapter 6 for Bio 181, and this talks about ATP hydrolysis. Okay, so ATP, this is the energy currency of the cell. We talked about this a little bit before when we learned about the organelle of the mitochondria. It produced this ATP. So you can think of ATP as the molecule that's required to do any of the little work in a cell. So it's like if you come into a country and you bring $100 bill and you're in Japan, you have to exchange it for yen. So ATP is, so if you have $100 bill, US, right? That's going to be like your glucose molecule or your sugar molecule, right? The whole thing. So what the cell needs to do is to take that and to convert it into a molecule called ATP. If you're in Japan, this would be like your yen, right? So it's the currency that's used in that area. So that's just what ATP is. ATP hydrolysis is going to be how we actually get the energy out of ATP, and it's going to drive endergonic reactions. So ATP is often used, right, to drive reactions that are going to require energy. So for example, we talked about if you had multiple small molecules, you want to put those together to a bigger molecule, right? It's going to require ATP. This is a reaction where we're getting more ordered. It's not going to occur just spontaneously, and it's going to require energy. And that is the definition of an endergonic reaction, right? So this is also an anabolic reaction. Hydrolysis, this word you learned before. It was part of a reaction to split something apart. And we learned it when we were splitting covalent bonds from a polymer to a monomer. Now we're going to use it to actually split apart ATP itself to get the energy out to power the reaction. So the hydrolysis is of the molecule itself. So what does the molecule stand for? ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so if you look over here on the right, adenine, this is the name of the base, the nitrogenous base that is part of this molecule. It also has a sugar, ribose. And so this looks very much like a nucleotide, which was part of our monomers that we learned when we learned about macromolecules. But instead of just one phosphate group over here, we've actually got two more. So that means we have three phosphate groups. Phosphate groups are PO4 2 minus. This is a functional group that we learned. And what we learned associated with each phosphate group is it has a lot of energy. So each has tons of energy in the electrons that are in the phosphate group. So there's double bonds that are very highly energetic. It's negatively charged. So each of these oxygens over here has an extra electron on it. So there's high energy electrons. And so you can think of this as sort of like energy that's stored. So this is potential energy, this chemical energy, energy stored in the phosphate group. And specifically, this last phosphate group at the very top. So get another color. This one up here, this bond is really high energy. And so when this comes off, that energy can be used. Okay, so adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates. So this is showing ATP, our high energy molecule. And if ATP is broken apart, so we add water to it, remember that process is called hydrolysis, right? We're breaking it apart. We're adding water to it. Then the energy is coming out for reactions that are going to build something up. So we're going to couple the breaking apart of ATP with the building up of something else. So we're taking the chemical energy basically in these electrons. So these electrons here and really high energy in the phosphate group, particularly, some of those are going to get transferred over here. And then those are going to be used to drive reactions. These would be reactions that are going to be anabolic reactions. Then you have low energy product. And instead of adenosine triphosphate, now we have adenosine diphosphate, which means two. So adenosine diphosphate. Okay. So we've got two phosphates, two phosphate groups here. Whereas up here, this is adenosine triphosphate. So we had three phosphates. So one of the phosphate groups is often transferred over here. So all of the energy goes with it, and now it's going to help power that reaction. This ADP can be recycled. It can be made back into ATP. And in fact, it is in the cell millions of times every second in your cell. So this is happening just all of the time. It's probably the most common reaction in your body. Making ATP, this is going to happen through the process of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. And do you remember where that occurs? At least in a eukaryotic cell, it happens in the mitochondria. So we're going to learn about that later. Okay, right? That was this organelle in the cell. So we make a whole bunch of ATP and then we use it. And then it's recycled. All right, that's it for this video.